In the following tutorial, we will show you the conversion of the FSX400 Integral to an FSX400 remote version. All of the required components from the retrofit kit are described and numbered in the mechanical retrofit instructions. All of the components are labeled in accordance with the mechanical retrofit instructions. Before starting work, disconnect the equipment from the power supply, observing the 5 safety rules in accordance with DIN VDE 0105. Open the front of the transmitter head and remove the display. To do so, gently press in the 4 locking terminals laterally and carefully remove the display module. The module is used later in the remote unit. Loosen the 2 Phillips head screws on the communication board, carefully pull the module out and remove the ribbon cable on the back of the communication board. The communication board is also used later in the remote unit. Now open the rear of the transmitter head, loosen the 2 screws on the connector panel and remove it. If you convert a version without inputs and outputs, the old measuring head must now be removed. This is necessary because in a version without inputs or outputs, the transmitter head only has 2 interlayer connections. However, for the remote version, a transmitter head with 8 interlayer connections is required. The transmitter head is used later in the remote unit. Slide the ribbon cable completely into the plastic sleeve, otherwise it will be damaged when turning the transmitter head. Then loosen the side screw on the transmitter head and unscrew the transmitter head from the front end board. In the next step, the new transmitter housing with the 8 interlayer connections is screwed onto the housing of the front end board. Carefully pass the ribbon cable through the bushing of the transmitter head using the plastic cap and then screw it to the housing of the front end board as far as it will go. Make sure that the connector and the cable in the protective sleeve are not damaged. Then turn it back to the desired mounting position and secure the transmitter head using the lateral hexagon socket screw. A 3 mm Allen key is required for this purpose. Pull the connector on the ribbon cable through the opening in the plastic cap and attach the ribbon cable to the connector strip on the remote connection board. The remote connection board is then inserted into the housing. On the housing PCB, there are 8 contact pins that lead into the female connectors of the remote connection board. Proceed very carefully, otherwise the contact pins may become slightly bent or damaged. The remote connection board is secured in the housing using 2 screws. The remote terminal block, item 8, is now inserted in the back of the transmitter head and screwed into position. On the housing PCB, there are 8 contact pins that lead into the female connectors of the connection board. Proceed very carefully, otherwise the contact pins may become slightly bent or damaged. The remote unit is provided with a pre-fitted cable ex-factory. Install the remote unit at the designated assembly area. Pull the cable through the PG clamp and secure the cable with the PG gland. The shielding is screwed to the housing earth in the rear part of the transmitter head. The connection cable is connected to the remote unit as follows: green to terminal 5, ground; yellow to terminal 6, VDD; white to terminal 1, M/R; pink to terminal 2, HS; brown to terminal 3, RX; and grey to terminal 4, dx. The wall bracket is provided with a pre-fitted cable ex-factory. In the next steps, the previously disassembled modules are now installed. When converting a version without inputs and outputs, the transmitter head has two interlayer connections. In the version with inputs and outputs, the transmitter head has 8 interlayer connections. Carefully pass the ribbon cable through the bushing of the transmitter head and then screw it to the wall bracket as far as it will go. Then turn it back to the desired mounting position and secure the transmitter head using the lateral hexagon socket screw. A 3mm Allen key is required for this purpose. Attach the ribbon cable to the connector strip on the communication board. The communication board is then inserted into the housing. On the housing PCB, there are 8 contact pins that lead into the female connectors of the communication board. Proceed very carefully, otherwise the contact pins on the circuit board may become slightly bent or damaged. The communication board is secured in the housing using 2 screws. Now the HMI board is attached. This has 4 clips which lock it into place on the communication board. During insertion, make sure that the pins on the connector strip do not get bent when attaching the connector. The connector panel is then installed on the rear. Insert this carefully without damaging the contacts in the housing and screw the connector panel into position using the 2 Phillips head screws. Finally, the electrical connection is established and the front and back of the housing can be screwed together with the covers.